All right, well, let's show you some shots of the playing field so we can localize this at the high school. I'm going to show you an aerial shot of the football and baseball fields in relation to the gas wells. You can see that right there. As you can see, dead trees, burned grass, and you can see the effects of at least the brine around the area. Jim, anything been done recently in regard to this leak?
Well, Dr. Drew, we've unearthed some really troubling information here about the school, Leroy Middle Senior High School. There are 6 natural gas wells on the school grounds. This gas has been extracted using a technique called fracking. Last summer, a month and a half before the first girl became symptomatic, that they were cited for 2 of these wells spilling this liquid onto the ground, killing trees and vegetation around the area of these wellheads. It's where students every day play, do sports, practice their sports right there on school grounds.
North Dakota's oil industry is pushing to change the state's laws to allow radioactive waste generated from fracking to be dumped at local landfills.
Radioactive fracking. Frack companies want to dump radioactive waste in the landfill. When did fracking become radioactive? Well, it turns out natural gas is naturally radioactive, ladies and gentlemen, and nobody tells you that. They couldn't sell it as radioactive methane, but it is radioactive because natural gas contains natural radon. Yes, radon. You've heard that word before. Radon comes from deep beneath the ground, from radium, and it goes everywhere. Typical domestic exposure to radon is about 1.25 picocuries per liter. That's the norm. However, levels of radon in natural gas can be as high as 2,500 picocuries per liter. That's a full 2,000 times higher than normal. And it's delivered to your home. Radon does not burn with natural gas. It floats through the flame, around your house, and eventually decays into particles of lead. That's its natural pathway. And since radon is radioactive, it decays from a gas into particles of lead, which are toxic, and they just blow around your home like dust. It's bad news, ladies and gentlemen. From what comes out of a frack well to what goes into a frack well, it's all bad news. If you search for the term fracking fluid leak, you get about 100,000 different results. The toxic shit is leaking everywhere, in residential neighborhoods, in schools, and these well pads are everywhere. There are over 1.1 million well pads in America right now, next to homes, on school property. Radioactive frack fluid leaking stinky, toxic, nasty waste from well pads. These well pads are a fucking dump, and they're everywhere. Every dot you're looking at here is a well pad. People don't realize the proliferation, the extent of the development.
Okay, this is the well over here that I did the video from. They flare it mostly at night for the longest amount of times, but as you can see, it's very close to the house. And I know of people around here that get sick from this. We're trying to move away. We're not getting a dime from this, and the reason why I'm even talking to you is to try to keep others from being in this situation. Don't get these in your backyard.
Here on this screen, there are about 100 well pads. 100. And yet there's 1.1 million of them in America, with tens of thousands of new ones being added every year. And every time a well pad goes up, it's like the circus is coming to town. There's fumes, dust, outgassing, venting, flares, toxic fumes, smoke, noise. It's a nightmare. It's Contamination City, and it's in a city near you. And when these wells leak, they'll leak into the ground, into the water, into the air. There's a term out there called fugitive methane. They say up to 10% of the gas collected escapes into the atmosphere and becomes a fugitive.
The leakage, fugitive emissions, purposeful venting of methane from shale gas and oil development is very significant.
They cannot control the evil they are harnessing. The worst of this story is what's called the disposal well. Frack companies are allowed by law to drill deep holes into the ground and flush all their toxic waste down into that disposal well. It's a catastrophe. They have no idea where this stuff goes. On top of that, each frack well requires an average of 8 million gallons of water. That's 8 million gallons per well times a million wells in America. That's 8 trillion gallons of toxic water they flushed into the earth so that they can bring up radioactive toxic gas and deliver it to your home. That is the world we live in. And that is what is spilling into the LA basin right now. Millions of tons of radioactive toxic gas. And that gas isn't leaking from any old well. It's leaking from a strategic methane reserve, like a big piggy bank for the gas company. That's where they store all their gas in California. That's what's leaking. 85 billion cubic feet of radioactive methane-laced radon gas. Available for consumption, and delivery is free if you live downwind from the site. Every frack site is like the water crisis in Flint. For years, people were seeing their water come out looking like piss, smelling like Vaseline. And the city was like, everything is fine, go back to shopping. It's the same way with these frack sites. For years, people have been complaining, showing the exact same symptoms like the people in the California methane disaster. And for years, the government has been telling these people to go back to shopping. Well, excuse me, but fuck shopping, fuck sports, fuck the television. It's time to wake up and smell the methane. It smells like rotten eggs because the story is rotten to the core. At every opportunity, government and corporations will choose money over people, villas over villages. Each and every time, money wins while the people are left gasping for air. We can't breathe. We can't breathe. That isn't just a police brutality slogan these days. It's a fracking slogan. It's what people near the 1 million fracking sites in America are saying. We can't breathe, and nobody is listening. They can't breathe because of the fracking. They can't eat because of the GMOs. They can't protect themselves because of gun control. Every time they pass a law, the people can't breathe. And every time they stage a false flag, they leave us gasping for air. It's their MO. They want us terrified. The war on terror isn't foreigners against us. The war on terror is our government waging a war to terrorize the American people. More people in this country die from just about every other cause than international terrorism. The domestic terrorists, the governments, the corporations, they terrorize us every day, every which way they can these days. They poison the water supply, the air supply, the food supply. They mandate vaccines. And if you step out of line, here comes the SWAT team. So shelter in place, grab your ankles because you are free to do as we tell you.
What part of clean burning is this when you consider natural gas? It's the plant right over there.
I have put concrete in my windows to try to buff this, and it does not work. I have had no running water in my house for 3 years because of Range Resources. When they did Little H1 behind my house, the DEP said that they fractured and contaminated my water well beyond usage.
Within 1 mile of these stations, within these well pads, there are toxic fumes coming off that we can experience, that can be monitored, that are directly correlated to the health of these people.
We have 28 gas wells within 1 mile of my home. They would dump stuff up there, and it just was billowing into the air. I kept like a little health journal, more for myself than anything else. I had blood in my mucus. I could smell burnt plastic, almost like a Play-Doh smell. I was also dizzy on this day with the smell. So bad I had to lay on the bedroom floor. My son had a stomach ache. My husband had blood from his nose. My ears were hurting, sore throat. My son threw up when he was playing outside. Son had sore throat. So this is weeks. So this isn't a cold. I mean, the list just goes on and on. It's like an invasion.
Exposure to radioactive compounds that have come up from these deep formations, these deep shale formations.
No, Grandma, do it.
Adam, you stay away, buddy.
Adam, yeah.
I don't know.
I can't believe it's just burning like that.
The toxins in the air are horrific. We understand that there's filters and stuff to filter the air. They refuse to put them on because they're $7,000 a month to put on. If that thing's spewing out $1,000 a month worth of product, they can surely afford a $7,000 filter to protect us and our kids. I mean, that's only fair. We've all seen health effects from it.
All the risks associated with oil and gas in general, which are not inconsequential, get magnified because of the scale of this activity. Many more wells, longer to drill each well, many more wells per pad, many more wells per square mile, much more intense use of chemicals, much higher waste, a lot more trucking, a lot more piping, a lot more emissions. Everything scales up. And as everything scales up, the risk factors go up.
It's at the surface where spills and blowouts cause chemically infused water to seep into the water table.
Chemically infused water to seep into the water table. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, that is one way to put it. Another way to put it is that this frack water that is being pumped directly into the homes of unsuspecting Americans is a toxic delivery brought to you by big corporations and big government. This is just another example of innovation gone terribly wrong. The air we breathe, the food we eat, the water we drink, it is all polluted thanks to big corporations, and it's rubber stamped by phony politicians pretending to serve the public interest. This is no different than when the fascist police state pumps an unarmed teenager full of lead, except here nobody sees the crime. Frack water is a silent killer. Imagine taking a shower in this water. Your shower instantly becomes a gas chamber full of toxic gas and chemicals. This is beyond criminal, and best of all, it is perfectly legal. You can even buy stock in these companies. Call your broker today, invest in gas. You'll make a few cents and help kill thousands, if not millions of people in the process. Definitely a win-win situation. Evil is as evil does, my friends. Never forget it. Fracking is just one example. But if we continue to be complacent, if we continue to do nothing and not talk about what is really going on here, these kind of things will certainly doom us all. Look at this paper that is just starting to hit the news vine. Documents reveal billions of gallons of oil industry wastewater legally injected into Central California aquifers. Almost 3 billion gallons with a capital B of oil industry wastewater has been illegally dumped in the Central California aquifers that supply drinking water and farming irrigation. That's the water you drink, that's the water you take a shower with, that's the water you use to do your laundry, and that's the water that's being used to grow your food. And according to state documents obtained by the Center for Biological Diversity, the wastewater entered the aquifers through at least 9 injection disposal wells used by the oil industry to dispose of waste contaminated with frack, fluids, and other pollutants.